going to do today, guys. I am going to start with a PowerPoint presentation. The first couple slides are really my advice to you guys, some insights, if you will. And then the next ones will actually be kind of I'm going to kind of go into the presentation that I would normally do if I were talking to a corporation. Now, help me understand, the people that are on the call, are you guys sales, or are you account management, or do I have both?
This is PJ. I'm account management.
Okay.
Primarily account management here too, Denise.
Okay. So pretty much that. Okay. I'm gonna slide it more toward the account management side then. But honestly, sales or account management, it's kind of almost the same, because really what you're doing is you're presenting the information. So I'll kind of slide it toward the account management side, but I'll kind of point out some things on sales too. As far as presentations, when it comes, yeah, go ahead.
Can you please slide it toward doing reviews on GPA?
Yep.
Yeah, I think PJ's suggestion is good, because looking at the attendees, we have no salespeople on the call.
They're all account managers. Okay. Yeah, I will definitely do that. As I say, it's very kind of similar, but yeah, I will put it toward a account review for sure. Okay. So in essence, what you want to do with Travel GPA, and this is probably in a lot of things, is you want to tell a story. And although it's an account review, it's really the story of how they've been doing, and what you can do with that information. So I always find that when I'm talking to corporations, it's more like, okay, let's take a look at what's happened, and let's kind of look at a story that way. One of the things with Travel GPA is you want to pre-cache everything that you're going to show them. So what does that mean? It really means that before you sit down with the client, if you can possibly do this, even if it means you're doing it at your office before you go to see them, or before they get to your office, or however you do that, you'll want to go to all the sections that you're going to show them within Travel GPA and go there first and have them preloaded, because it will save you some time. Some of the, especially with like Humana, they're very large, and so if I'm going to go in and say show them traveler scorecards, that's a lot of data to crunch, because for each traveler that they have, and there's a lot of travelers, it has to crunch how many trips they had, how much savings they had, all their goals. As you can imagine, that's just a lot of stuff. So it's going to take a long time to load. And if something takes 20 seconds to load, it seems like about 20 minutes when you're sitting in front of a client. So just go into that section, and if you've already gone into it, then it's what we call pre-cached, and it'll go much faster. Have it up, and if you can, have it already up and running and have it already pre-cached. So like if you're doing a web presentation, that's easier to do. And then right before you sit down with them, just kind of make sure it's accessed so it hasn't timed out, that sort of thing. So those are just a few tips just to save you some time, if you will. Now, right now as we speak, and this is going to be the way it's going to be for the next few months, and if you guys all sat in on that first training with Rhonda, you'll know that we're coming out with this new version. We're calling it Travel GPA HD. So everything's still in the old system, but we're moving things to the new system, and the new system's kind of cooler to look at, and it's a little easier to navigate, and everything's all kind of one place. But the problem is not everything's on the new system, so you kind of got to access both of them. So I'm going to show you how it's easiest to do that, so that you guys can make it flow nicely. All right, and obviously you want to present the client based on their needs. Now that's more of a sales type thing, so if you know ahead of time, hey, what's their main interest? But for you, from an account management perspective, what you want to do is look at their data ahead of time, and then, like I said, understand the story. So if you understand they're having some issues here or here, understand where you're going to go with that, what their specific needs are, and have a kind of a resolution, kind of a summary for that. And then this one doesn't really apply because this is more of a demo presentation. And this one would apply to account management as well. If you're going to try to do it live, and I think it's great if you can do it live, make sure you just have the information as a backup in a PowerPoint. And that's just kind of a, I'm sure you guys all do that anyways, because just in case there's no internet access or something happens, you just have the information on hand so you have a backup of it. So, all right. So these slides right here, this is more of a sales perspective. Do you want me to go through this so it gives you a better understanding of Travel GPA of what it is, or you guys want me to kind of skip this stuff?
I'd rather
You
get
should
into
go
the meat
through
of
it.
it.
Yep. I agree.
I'm sorry, what was the answer?
I get into the meat of it.
Okay, so forget this. All right, got it. Easy enough. All right, so now I'm in a browser, right? I'm in Firefox, use Explorer, whatever browser you want to use. Now what I've done is I have the old travel GPA on one tab, and you'll know it's the old one because it says bi.travelgpa.com. So, and I already logged in, and I've already pre-cached it, if you will. The other tab is test.travelgpa.com. So I have Humana loaded in both ones. So first off, you know, from a demo perspective, I would probably come in here and explain all this stuff. But since we're focusing on account review, I'm just going to go ahead and run that. And I'm going to start for an account review. What I would do is I would start over on the new system, the test system, if you will. This is all their data. It's already loaded over here. I'm sure Rhonda can explain that to you. That's already loaded. It's the same information, but this one's just a little more graphical, okay? So I would start on the test system. And like I said, have two different tabs open, and you can easily flip back and forth. It just saves you a tremendous amount of time. So from here, from account review, go, okay, let's start high level. So I'm talking to Humana at this point. I'm doing a quarter review, so I'm just looking at their first quarter review. At least in my mind, that's what I'm doing. And so I just start, okay, high level. All right, let's take a look at this. You have 2 grade point averages at this point. They have 1 against their goals. So how well are they doing against their goals? They got a 3.5, and that's on a 1.0 to a 4.0 scale. And then how well are they doing against benchmark? And that means how do they do against other corporations externally? And they're doing a 3.7, so they're doing pretty well there. So that's excellent, okay? So let's take a look at the goals that we've had set up for these guys. So here's the list of goals that they have. And so just to kind of explain it to them so they understand, the first one is 14 days advance purchase. I'm just going to explain one, and the other ones will kind of follow suit. So what happens is they have a goal of 50%. So that means they want 50% of their travelers booking at least 14 days advance for domestic. They're actually doing 53.6, so they're beating their goal. They got a green little dot there. Awesome. And then the benchmark average is how well do other corporations do within that same metric. So it depends on if you're setting the goals for your client or they're setting their own goals. But how you do that is whatever this goal percentage is going to be. And a lot of times corporations aren't really sure what percentage they should put in there. Should they put 10% or 50% or 90%? So a lot of them will use the benchmark average to try to do that. Same for you guys. If you're going to preset some goals for your account, what I usually do is look at the benchmark average, look at the actual, and go, all right, benchmark's 48, I'm going to bump it up a little bit to 50, but they're already actually beating that. So the next step might be bump this up to maybe 55 or something like that. Set a new goal for them to attain. So that's kind of how I'd explain those. 12-month trend is, although we ran it for a quarter, this just kind of gives them, 12-month trend of how well they're doing. The red month is the worst month they did, September, and the green month is the best month they did, so December. So it kind of shows them overall how they're doing. Now what you can do is, if they let us say, hey, I want to see how we did in the last 6 months, you can put your cursor down and drag it, and it's going to give you kind of a, I don't know if you can see that, but it highlighted that area, and it tells them over that time period, they actually kind of went up by 0.3%. Or you can kind of drag that down and say, well, what about those, those 4 months? Well, they kind of went down in 0.6. So it just kind of gives you a little bit of a micro-trending within those months. So if you feel comfortable with that, great. Maybe that's more of an advanced step. And the last thing over here is the ROI savings. And you'll see this down at the bottom. And it basically says, hey, they have potential savings of almost $1 million. And that's only for 1 quarter. So that's not like a whole annual thing. That's a 1 quarter potential savings. That's a huge number. Now, this is a huge company, but that is also a huge number, and you'll see where the savings are broken out. Okay, so what does that number really mean? It basically just says that ROI savings is based on max potential savings. So that means that if this 50% were to go to 100%, they would have, they would save about $284,000. So no one's ever going to be 100%, right? So you can click on this 100% and go, okay, I'm never going to be 100%, but what if I could get my people at 20% better? And you'll see this percentage right here, what's at 20%? Or maybe, I could do 30% better. I just drag it over to 30%. Then it'll recalculate my savings. It will also show me how it's calculating my savings. basically, if people book 14 days in advance, it's a $60 savings over if they book less than 14 days. So it tells you all that information right there. And then it lets them do that. So if you're talking to your client, you can make it more interactive and say, okay, well, in the next quarter, let's say, because we're working on a days and took an average. Days advance purchase is a little tough because we can't say, hey, this person booked 3 days in advance. But had they called us, 9 days ago, the flight would have been X because, no one has a magic ball. So we kind of have to do averages on this one. So that's what that number is.
It's their data.
Yes, absolutely. Good question. This is only Humana's data. This is not a benchmark average. This is their specific data.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Now, some of the other ones, what we calculate, like acceptance lower fare, we actually, if I click on this, this is truly, on average, you guys offered them $396 fares. On average, they took $474 fares. So this one is more of a true potential because this is what you offered and this is what they took. So it's not a, an estimate, if you will. And the difference for them is $77, which is actually, so you know, is pretty good. Usually I've seen numbers up there. I've seen them as high as $1,200, $2,400. But generally on average, this number is somewhere in the 300 mark. So as far as acceptance low fare goes, this is a pretty good one. And once again, you can take them and play with this. So if I'm talking to this client, I'm going to look down here and go, look, there's a lot of green, but there's also some red, right? And so there's some red here with trips with hotel bookings. That's always a low one for everybody. Online adoption. They're being pretty aggressive on that goal, but they're still doing really well. And then acceptance lower fare. So if it were me, the one that I would probably focus on, if I were talking to Humana and give them a recommendation, I would recommend that they would focus on this one for the coming quarter. Why is that? Because they're lower than their goal, they're lower than the benchmark, and there's some really big savings right here potential, right? So that's basically saying they gave up almost $250,000 in one quarter because their people weren't accepting the lowest fare. So this is where you could start drilling down and say, okay, well, let's look at this deeper and see what that looks like. So I'm going to click on accept this lower fare. Now notice this loaded, boom, like that, because I'd already gone in here and clicked on this and it already preloaded. So otherwise, this would be sitting here saying loading, and you'd be like, okay, hurry up. So just keep that in mind. So when I click on accept this lower fare, it's going to show me some trending. I don't want to look at year to year at this point. I want to kind of look more granular at month to month. Okay. The red is my company. The blue is the benchmark, and the goal line here is this orange line. So I can kind of see how trending's going. So trending-wise, I was actually doing much better in January than I was in February, and the March kind of came up a little bit. So I haven't been trending very well in a positive direction. I mean, January I almost hit my goal line, and then, yeah, not so much here. So, I'm kind of going the wrong direction on that, okay? Next one is potential savings. This is basically telling me, and I can look at a traveler division or DK a number under this group roll-up. If I were to focus on a set number of people or divisions, departments, which one's going to give me my biggest bang for my buck? So for instance, and if I put my cursor on this, it'll tell me, Carla here took 10 trips. Only once did she accept the lowest fare, and she lost the company $700. And then you can see that these people, have the most money here. So if you wanted to focus on a few travelers, I'd probably focus on these guys down here. Or you can look at a division level, same kind of concept, or account number. So really it looks like the main account number has the biggest. And they have the most number of trips, it looks like. So, but these guys, yeah, that's where your main savings is going to come from. They gave up, $217,000. Or take it more to the granular level of division, and then you'll see, these guys are the ones that you need to focus on. Okay? And then compliance is kind of the reverse of that. It's basically saying, all right, who is the most compliant and who is the least compliant? Now, this is on the traveler level, and what you can do is say, you know what, I don't want to look at the people that just took 1 or 2 trips. I want to see people that took at least, say, 5 trips. What does that look like? Or maybe people that took less than 3 trips or 2 trips. once again, you can talk to your client and say, okay, how do you want to look at this? Do you want to look at people that took, 3 trips or 4 trips at minimum? And then if they want to look at it in grid format, this might be a little easier to look at. And then you can see what that looks like. And you can sort it by any of these. If you see these headers, you can sort it. So, what's their, let's sort it by their actual. So these people are, 0 for 0, if you will. So they took 4 trips and not once accepted the lowest fare. So all these guys right here are at 0%. So those might be the, the 10 travelers, if you will, that you want to focus on. So various ways to look at it and see, okay, if we want to make a game plan for doing better in this, do we want to finish on specific divisions or travelers, what does that look like? Now, if there's any other goals that, you want to drill down to, you can do the same thing. So you can drill down to, online adoption and go through the same type of thing. And every client that you do an account review for is going to be different, obviously, right? Because people are going to have their strengths and their weaknesses. So just really look to see, if it were you, which ones would you focus on, and then see how you can do some potential savings there. So that's on the goal side. Another way to look at the ROI, if they want to see it more on this potential, is, you can kind of look at it over here too. So accept this lower fare, I can expand this. It's giving me the same kind of information, but maybe you like this look better than the other look. It's totally up to you. And you can, kind of do the same little slide bar there. So same kind of information. You can skip this section if you want to, but if you kind of like the jazzier look on the ROI, then this might do it for you. Now, the other thing that I'd want to show after these goals is taking it down to the traveler report card. We just released this. You probably didn't see it in your first training session because I think it came out after that. This one takes a long time to load. So if you're going to preload and you're going to show it, definitely preload this because you'll sit here for a couple minutes waiting for this one because it has to crunch all those travelers. But I think visually this one is pretty high on the list. When we've kind of showed it to different corporations, they were pretty wowed about this. Also, I'm not sure if you guys have heard the term gamification. It's something that a lot of corporations are looking at. It's going to be big at GBTA coming up. It's basically how can we do gaming with their travelers? How can we, make them kind of compete against each other to do better? That's kind of the premise of it. This module right here will help with that. So if any of your clients are kind of looking at that, this is the way you can do it. And you don't have to put prizes next to it necessarily, but, you could make it a whole entire system. So what's this basically saying is I can group all my travelers. I can group them by traveler name, by each division. I can do it by spend levels, etc. And then I can sort them different ways too. So I can sort them by the ones that are going to give me the most potential savings. So if I do no grouping and then potential savings, Michael here has potential for about $11,000 savings, Jill at $10,000, etc. You'll also see these numbers here. This is how they're ranked. So Peter here is your best traveler. He's ranked number 1, has a perfect 4.0. And I can scroll down all the way to the bottom, and I can see, my worst travelers. So this is how they're ranked overall. Or I can kind of do it by kind of reverse order, if you will, grade point average. So Leslie here is my worst traveler. She's ranked 50th. She has, she spent $8,000, and she obviously didn't do much in as far as compliance go. So these are going to give you overall how to do those. Okay, so this is where I'd start. I'd go over the goals, answer those kind of questions, etc. Now what we're going to do is we're going to flip off of goals, and we're going to go to the other system, and this is the older system, and now we're going to take a look at benchmarking. All right, so I'm going to go down here to benchmarking. Now this section right here will get moved over to the newer system we just looked at, but it hasn't been moved yet. So this is the next thing to get moved. So for right now, you have to access the old system. So this is where they can actually see how well they're doing against external companies. And these are companies based on spend, region, industry, however you want to do it. And when you go to run the report card for your client, kind of play with it. If it's an industry that's kind of unique and their travelers travel uniquely, then you might want to do industry for sure. If they're a larger company, you might want to do spend. Spend's kind of your default. Industry is kind of your secondary, if you will. All right. So you can look at overall averages, but then what I do is and you can see their benchmark or their GPA for this is 3.1. So they're great. They're really good on their goals. Their benchmark averages they're good, but they're not as good as their goals. So this is going to help you figure out why that is. Okay. So once again, we're just looking at first quarter here. Domestic, here's their company, and then here's other companies based on similar spend. And I can see average ticket cost, oh, I'm pretty good, got a green, good there. And then I'm kind of off on average cost per mile. And I'm looking at economy only. I can also look at an international. International seems to be where their prices are off a bit. They don't do any transborder, and then overall it's kind of a mixed as well. Now, what's really key here, though, is you're looking at spend, and that's a whole big area, and it really comes down to what city pairs do they really fly out of. So in this section, city pair analysis is really the big key factor you want to go into. So you guys have loaded about 5 city pairs. I might suggest, especially for a company this size, you might want to put in maybe 10 city pairs so you can really do a thorough analysis. Take it down to average cost per segment or average cost per mile, depending on which one they kind of look at more, or whatever one you guys usually default to, and then see what that looks like. So the red is their company, blue is benchmark, and then you can kind of come down here and see how they're measuring up. So overall, I mean, they're pretty spot on. I mean, even when they got red, it's only off by less than $1. So I have a feeling it's more international for this client. Not sure how much international I do offhand, but you might want to look at some international city pairs because back over here, we saw that their international was off. So I would take their top international city pairs, their top 2, 3, and then take a look at it and put them over here and see what they look like there.
Denise, we're comparing this industry-wise?
I did this one on spend.
On spend.
So we could do industry if you wanted, but I just did spend since they're kind of a large account.
Is there a way to determine the size of the makeup of the benchmark?
The best way to look at that is to do, like if I'm over here on overall, so this company is about 4.5 million, and the benchmark average is 3.4 million.
Do we know that there are 100 companies that each spend 3.4 million or 2?
So if I come over here and I put my cursor here, that very last line will tell me there are 18 companies they're being benchmarked against.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep, and that's a good indication to see, because the thing is you could choose industry and spend and region, and if you start doing that, and if you put your cursor here and you look at that last line, it could be 1. So especially with a very, very large account, make sure you kind of back it off a little bit, not do 5, do 1 or 2 of the selections. But this will tell you how many. Okay. So yeah, just kind of if you were going to analyze it and make recommendations, how would you do that? And I would just say, city pairs, expand it out a bit, especially for bigger companies, and see if you can't, and add some international in there, and just do a little more analysis, because this isn't really telling me a story of any big city pairs they're having issues with. Now, if you did see a city pair that they had some issues with, let's just take this one for instance. Let's say this was, they're really off on this one. You can actually click on this city pair, and it will tell you, Midway to Louisville, which carriers fly that city pair. Either they fly or the benchmark comparison flies. You can drag those over here and do a carrier analysis. And what this is going to tell you is it's going to tell you basically what the averages are for those. So for Midway to Louisville, here's your company benchmark, and here's other corporations and how they fare. Once again, very, very close there, so it's kind of hard to say. You could also do a class of service, but that one's obviously going to be economy. Okay. Next thing you can look at under benchmarking is hotel. So this is our company versus the benchmark comparison. We're at 138 versus 139, so they're better than the benchmark, right? So some good stuff there. Our system automatically loads in their top chains and their top regions, but you can also, just click on those and see some analysis, especially if your client is off, like if their average cost per night is higher than the benchmark comparison, then this is a good analysis to do. So it's going to answer that question, well, why is that? So if you told your client, hey, your average cost per night is $10 more than the benchmark, well, why is that? This is going to answer it. So is it a chain thing? So I come down here to average cost per night, it automatically knows all their top chains. So here's my chains. Once again, it's a little easier to look at down here, and I can see, how I'm doing on that. So I'm kind of high on some of these, but, this one's probably the most at the Hilton Garden Inn. So it might, give me some, where do I focus my attention if I'm going to focus a little bit on negotiations. Now their rates, are better than the benchmark, so maybe they don't want to focus too much. but that might help. Another thing to do is look at specific regions. So do they need help in specific areas? Average cost per night. Look down here. Once again, we know their regions. So overall, we can look. They're off on Chicago, and yeah. So I'd say Chicago's probably their worst one. They're off by $11 per night or so. So if they wanted to, then they can know that they can focus in Chicago and see if they can't negotiate a little bit better on those. Okay? And then the same thing for car. We can take a look at that too. So if their rate's pretty good, we can look at their top companies, and then we can also look at their top cities. Now, what this does is on air, car, hotel, is it just kind of gives you an indication via benchmark is, where should you focus your energies if you want to focus on some things. So like, for instance, hotel, let's say, we really said, yeah, let's focus on Chicago and see if we can't negotiate better. That's where you want to come to compliance and take a look at your contracts and see how well you're doing. For hotel, we don't have a lot loaded, and there's some loaded here for air, so you might want to expand upon that for your clients. But here we can see, what their actuals are and then what their spend is. And if you had specific goals, you can put those in. Like maybe for preferred domestic, we're really trying to hit, 20% on American and 10% on Southwest or something. So if you have some goal percentages in there based on their contracts or, just their overall feel, that's going to help you. You could also take it down to specific city pairs. Now, for this one, I think you guys only have one city pair loaded, but it'll at least give you an idea what that looks like. So Green Bay to Louisville, you can see, you're trying to hit 80% on Delta, and you're at about 70%, and you can see what spends and segments are. So you can really expand this and put in all their contract type information and see, how close are they coming? Are they on track to reach their goals? It's the first quarter, so they have a lot of time to make that up and see how they're doing. So if, they're short on their goals, they can see where they're going to focus. Same thing for hotels. I can take it down to specific hotel properties. I can see how well I'm doing on those. The section I like best on this one is preferred hotel utilization by city. Now, what happens is if I have hotels listed here for 10 different cities, so this one's just in Kentucky, but if I had 10 other hotels, they're all different cities, those cities would automatically get put over here to utilization by city, and I can see how well I'm doing there. So what does that mean? So I had a preferred in this city, Louisville, Standiford. I can sort by preferred, so it looks like the Hilton is my preferred, and I can see what my rate is, but I can also see where everybody else is staying. So apparently, a lot of people like this Galt House. It's where a lot of people are staying there. So, and you can see how that all measures up. And so you can see where you want to focus. Obviously, a lot of people like the Marriott too. So maybe those are already preferred. I'm going to guess they probably are. So you want to get in those, get those preferreds listed in there, see how well they're doing. And this is just going to help them realize where they need to negotiate better, negotiate other deals. And you can do this for any city in the world. So it's very helpful. Lost savings, they lost $34,000 because their people didn't stay at preferreds, but that could have been because you didn't tag them as preferred. Okay, and then rental car, same kind of concept. What kind of deals do they have? Are they trying to hit a certain percentage or dollar figure? Get those in there, and then you can also take it down to a city level. Okay, now you could go much deeper, but I think as a high-level first starting point, those are the key points I'd hit on, and it really gives them, where are you having some issues, where would you like to focus, what's your potential savings, and how can we get there, and how can we take steps to get you better savings, which is really looking at the benchmark and looking at the compliance. Okay, now there's other sections, but I just don't want to overwhelm you guys. I think this is a really good starting point for an account review. It gives you some really good base information, and then from there you could expand upon it. So let me start by just kind of opening up for questions and see what what kind of questions you guys have at this point.
Are there different? This may have been said in the last demo, and that may be why some things didn't populate for me when I was looking at it. The two different sections, do they have different logins, and are those logins for created individually for each of us that are on the call?
For these two tab areas?
Yeah, for your goal ROI and for the GPA.
Gotcha. So for these two, it's the same exact user ID and password, okay? But one is you go to bi.travelgpa.com or however you normally log into the system. Like if you go to travelgpa.com and click on client login, this is the normal way you go. To get to the new test system, you just type in test.travelgpa.com. This is right here. Put in your same user ID and password, and it will give you same access to your account that you have under the other one. So it's just a different URL. Eventually,
Okay.
they will all get merged over, but we're just not there yet.
Okay.
Now,
Thank you.
one other thing, yeah, no problem. One other thing I did want to point out is a lot of people like to use the dashboard, and you can certainly do that. I'm not sure how helpful it is for an account review. I mean, because I have a feeling that you guys probably already given this information maybe from iBank. The dashboard is really about, their top 5 airlines and that sort of stuff. As far as true travel GPA, it's not going to go, oh, yeah, if you can shift this to this, it's going to give you this much savings. It's more your basic, hey, here's your top this, your top that type of stuff. So if you want to go into the dashboard because you want to use that as a graphical representation, that's fine. I think, though, you probably would use that under iBank, but that's totally up to you. So you have that option. So it's just going to take you to the dashboard, and you can have whatever dashboard you want set up for the client, and it's just going to show you these pods. So it's just really, if you have, an hour and a half to spend with a client, absolutely go in the dashboard. If you have 45 minutes to go, I would just show exactly what we showed before. All right, and each dashboard could be set up per user ID. So, if you're going to set it up under your user ID, it's going to be unique to you and what that looks like. All right, we have some trending stuff here. So, some decent stuff to show for trending month over month. Or you could show, here's your top 5 airlines and your top 5 car sit, and all that type of stuff. So, decent information, but, it just depends on how much time you have, whether or not you want to come here or not. Okay, any other questions?
None from me.
Okay. Nobody else? All right. Well, I guess that kind of wraps it up. So what I suggest at this point, in the next few days, and absolutely do this in the next few days, go in and pick an account, whether it's your account or not, and just play with the system. Just go in and run it. Act like it is your account if it's not. And, look at the information and pretend like you're presenting it to the account and pick out some things that you want to show and go through those things. If you have questions, let us know. But absolutely within the next, by Monday, make sure you do that because it's fresh in your mind. And then that way, it'll all seem, more relevant. So even if you can only take 15 minutes to do it, at least get in there, log in, and make sure that, you know how to log in and get through the information and look at the different information. So, but like I said, if you have questions, concerns, just give me a call and let me know, okay?
And Denise, I do have a question for you. When you go in and set parameters for an account and you get out and you get back into that account, do those settings remain with it?
The settings remain with the account. So let's say that you and somebody else were working on the same account. So it's the settings for the account. So if you change the settings, when the next person logged in, they would see the settings that you had. But yes, they do remain.
So if I log into Humana, which is mine, when we hang up, I'm going to see all this that you've created?
Yes, correct. So everything remains the same for Humana. Now the dashboard will be different. So whatever your login has for a dashboard's unique, to you. But all the other information that you see, all the goal percentages, all that stuff, that is for. It looks like someone put us on hold.